All right, welcome back to the Unathletic, everyone. Wow, it's strange to say that one out loud, but I like it. It's good. It's definitely good. I don't think we informed our listeners why we chose the Unathletic in the first place, so I think this would be a good time to do that. So Nate, you wanna let our listeners know why the Unathletic out of all the names we could have picked?
Well, this was actually your idea.
Yeah, but you can let them know.
So I think you should.
All right,
you should go ahead and do it.
So essentially, we were thinking because the other show, Rev Up Those Friars, which is every Friday, they had their name set in stone because they went to serve at high school. Matt and Nigel did. They're the Friars. Rev Up Those Friars is an obvious SpongeBob allusion, and it just worked. And then so we came together and we're like, oh man, what are we gonna do? And we realized that both of us are just two non-athletes who just like talking about sports. I don't know. I played tennis in high school. I haven't picked up a racket in a while. So I know for a fact that I cannot be considered an athlete anymore.
I was a JV superstar.
Oh yeah.
So I don't
JV.
know. I don't know if that counts for anything, but I was a JV basketball MVP. I pretty much have the same amount of MVPs as Kobe Bryant. He also has one MVP.
Yeah,
so.
but do you have the same amount of Oscars?
I do not have the same amount of Oscars. No.
Yeah, but Kobe has the same amount of Oscars as Leonardo DiCaprio.
I know.
If you think about it that way,
I know.
That is just amazing to me. But that was a total digression.
Neither here nor
Anyways, we picked this name because we're just two dudes who love sports. We enjoy watching, playing, not necessarily in our strongest suit. We're not like Nigel Ward here, who's striking out hitters for USD or anything. So, that's why we're called the Unathletic. And speaking of college athletics, actually,
Good transition.
the NCAA, and recently corruption has once again come to the forefront for the NCAA, notoriously one of the most corrupt sports organizations in the world. I think the NCAA, I'm not going to put them as horrible as FIFA because FIFA has like slaves and stuff. But yeah, I'd say number 2 behind FIFA is the NCAA. And then what happened was the University of Arizona men's basketball coach Sean Miller was wiretapped by an ongoing FBI investigation, and then the FBI caught Sean Miller speaking over the phone about freshman recruit DeAndre Ayton and offering him $100,000 to influence him to come to the University of Arizona. And when this news came out, I would say a lot of people weren't surprised, or at least I wasn't surprised, because not only has corruption become a seemingly regular thing in the NCAA, but I think it's been common knowledge that schools have been pulling shady stuff to recruit forever. And so my question to you, Nate, is why do this now out of all times, and why make it Sean Miller of all people?
Well, I think that it's pretty well established. I think you have to be pretty ignorant to not realize that this is happening all over college basketball. It's happening at every big program, but I think this is the first time where I've heard about like a head coach being caught discussing something like this. Usually, if it's happening by one of the assistant coaches are probably the ones that are handling all this. But this is the first time where I can remember that like a big time head coach is the one who's been caught. And when this FBI probe into college basketball started, I remember I was reading about it, and it was all the people that were specifically named were assistant coaches. There were really no big time head coaches that were named when this investigation started. So yes, this is certainly happening in college basketball, but I think it's more the assistants, and Sean Miller just got caught up in the wrong business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're right, and this finding has made this FBI investigation public, and by doing so, the FBI have stated that they're investigating all the major programs now into what kind of money was given, how long has this been going on, which coaches have been doing this, which assistant coaches have been doing this, what admin has been involved, and so on and so on and so on. It's just this endless web of involvement, it seems like, in terms of dismantling this corruption. And I'd say corruption is an interesting word. I think that's a word that's been thrown around a lot with this scandal on major networks. But when we were talking, it doesn't seem like this could have been the most corrupt thing in the world, given the context of how college athletes are already treated in the NCAA, right? So I mean, regardless, this is still potentially the biggest scandal in NCAA history. Especially basketball, right? This is the biggest thing to come out in basketball for a really long time. We've seen a lot of stuff in football that is definitely not okay with the Jerry Sandusky thing that went on and so on and so forth. But my question to you, Nate, is we've seen punishments handed out for past scandals all the time in the NCAA. They just stripped Louisville of a national championship. For Rick Pitino's involvement in recruiting students in very unethical ways. What should a punishment be for U of A and Sean Miller? But also take into account how corrupt the NCAA already is. So should there be a punishment at all for this?
Well, I don't think that necessarily what Sean Miller did or is alleged of doing is really morally wrong. But I mean, he did break the rules. But for me personally, I don't think that there should be a punishment. Honestly, I think that the NCAA invited this scandal with their own corruption. I think that you want to talk about college basketball players or college basketball coaches being corrupt. I think the NCAA needs to look at themselves and say, how did we let this happen? Look at the mirror and say, this environment of corruption, is this our fault? Are we the victims of our own wrongdoing, basically? Mm-hmm. And I mean, yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I've heard from you and other sources that Sean Miller is probably not even going to get fired. No. U of A is thinking about keeping him there, and there hasn't been any explicit punishment handed out by the NCAA yet because investigations are still going on and so forth. But it'd be interesting to me for Sean Miller to stay in his position without some executive order by the NCAA, because what about Rick Pitino and what happened at Louisville and them stripping them of a national title and then Rick Pitino's contract being effectively terminated? Would the NCAA then therefore just be kind of cherry picking as to what programs and what coaches that they attack? Because, for instance, Rick Pitino is a bigger name than Sean Miller. We'll put it that way. And so by punishing Rick Pitino and then being okay, well, Sean Miller, so we'll just let him stay there. Is that an ethical standard to be holding themselves to? Because for me, that seems pretty inconsistent.
But I think inconsistency is the name of the game with the NCAA. I think that there's been plenty of times where they've let certain programs off and punished other programs quite viciously. And from a kind of a selfish point of view, talking about Louisville getting stripped of their national championship, I would just like to point out that they beat Michigan in that 2013 national championship. So now that national championship has been stripped, if anyone asks me, did Michigan win the national championship in 2013, I'm going to say yes. God. Because, to be honest, Michigan got robbed in that game anyway. Trey Burke's block was clean, but that's neither here nor there. So I'm gonna stop talking right now before I break something.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So regardless of whether Michigan actually holds a NCAA national basketball championship in the year 2013 is, I think, besides the point, Nate.
Yes,
and I think part of the problem for me, getting back on track here, is just trying to identify a root of this is college basketball coaches, and I think college coaches in general across NCAA Division I sports, have far too much power in respect to the students that they're dealing with. With that, I think there's a complete sense of entitlement in thinking that they can get away with anything. I saw from USA Today that they said, okay, Sean Miller most likely did this because of a mentality of everyone else was doing it, so why can't we? But does that make it okay? Just kind of answering these overarching moral, ethical questions. But again, I think that these college coaches think they're above the law. I mean, look at Dabo Swinney and Jimbo Fisher. So Dabo cannot take his name seriously. Oh my God. I don't know what you guys are doing in the South, but name your kids a little better. Let's just put it that way. He gets paid multi-million dollars every year to be the head football coach of Clemson, who, has been obviously a very successful program in recent years. And he's publicly come out and said, oh, if you were to pay the college athletes, that's where you lose me. I wouldn't come to this job anymore. And I'm like, bull crap. You would totally come to this job because they're signing you multi-million dollar checks. And you're getting all that share of money, and your players are getting nothing. What a sweeter situation for a coach of an SEC program than that. ACC program than that. I can't think of one. And sorry, my mind was already on Jimbo Fisher, who's at A&M, which is an SEC school. And Jimbo I think he's getting paid over $10 million to be the coach at A&M per year. That is unbelievable considering the fact that college football athletes, college basketball athletes, and even athletes here at USD are treated like animals sometimes with all of the horrible NCAA regulations that go on. And, there was, I think you have a better memory of me of the one basketball player who was interviewed saying that he goes to bed hungry.
That was Shabazz Napier.
Yeah, Shabazz Napier
at UConn, yeah.
And some nights he went to bed hungry because he didn't have enough money to pay the bills. I think there was former NBA player, I think it was Jalen Rose on one of his talk shows that he was doing, and he was asked about whether or not college athletes should be paid. And his response was, okay, well, why are my coaches making so much money when my mom at her house doesn't even have enough money to keep the electrical bill and all the lights are off? Like, what kind of system have the NCAA, like, what has been going on with the NCAA to think that's okay?
Exactly.
And to think that they can exploit so many athletes who come from these really poor conditions and poor living environments to make them just seemingly like slaves almost. So I realize that the problem of solving all of the corruption within college athletics is not an easy process, and that's why it hasn't been done, because no one has a definite answer. But we're going to try to do it here on the Unathletic. Nate, where do we go from here, and what needs to happen in order to just untangle this mess?
I think you have to start by paying the players, and that sounds like a very simple answer, but it's really not, because there's all types of questions that go into paying the players. But I think it's a good start. You have to, in order to solve a problem, you got to start somewhere. And I think just starting by paying the players would be a step in the right direction to end some of the corruption that's in the NCAA.
Yeah, man. And I think, again, I'll say, like, I definitely agree with you in that the payers should be played, but we have to realize that this is such a multifaceted thing. It's like, okay, like, what do you pay? Like, how much money is allotted from the NCAA to give to Alabama versus University of San Diego? What does an Alabama football player make versus a USD swimmer? Like, even the question of, like, men's sports versus female sports, yeah, in terms of revenue splitting. Like, what is a fair amount of money to be allocated? And you can really get into the weeds with all this stuff. But it's clear that in order for those more intricate questions to be answered, some form of action needs to happen now. And I agree with you. It is paying the players now, right? And you mentioned that the NCAA, part of their reasoning for not paying, they cited which amendment, Nate?
They cited the 13th Amendment, with which, if you guys don't know, the 13th Amendment is the amendment that abolished slavery in the United States, except in the case of prison labor. And so the NCAA basically said that, because the 13th Amendment allows for unpaid prison labor, we can use that as a justification for not paying our players. So, yeah, like, the 13th Amendment is pretty much like, it abolished slavery, but not really. And I think really what the NCAA is saying is, like, yeah, we're basically
so you're saying, yeah,
slave owners,
yeah,
and these NCAA athletes are our slaves. That's literally what they're saying,
yeah,
by citing the 13th Amendment.
So you heard it here first, guys. College athletes are slaves because the NCAA said so explicitly by citing the 13th Amendment. I don't think that's a hot take for a lot of people.
No, it's not.
Because of how unfairly people have been treated. I mean, both of us have talked to athletes here, and we're very fortunate to be at an institution like USD and to have the great resources that we have. But talking with some of the athletes, even though USD is a very comfortable place to go to school, like, with all the time and effort they put in on a weekly basis, it can be tough. And our hearts go out to those guys, especially with all the hardship that they go through. And I think that kind of segues perfectly into the next thing we're going to talk about, is specifically at USD. There was recent news that USD head basketball coach Lamont Smith was arrested on March 25th. So that was 2 Sundays ago. On
February 25th.
February, yeah, not March. Yeah. He will be arrested. Oh, no.
That is into the future.
No, he definitely was already arrested. And on claims of domestic violence, assault with force, likely to commit great bodily injury, and also false imprisonment. And he was taken into custody at the Oakland Alameda Airport last month. So Man, I remember waking up to this on a last Monday morning, and I was just like shocked. How did you feel reading this news, Nate?
Well, actually, what happened was my sister called me asking about it, and I was like, "Oh, like what are you talking about?" And so I looked it up, and when I first heard about it, or when my sister first told me about it, I thought that, because it's funny enough that at the University of South Dakota, their head basketball coach's name is Coach Smith. So I at first thought, oh, they're talking about the University of South Dakota head coach, and they just got the USD mixed up. But yeah, as soon as I read it, I was just shocked and absolutely disbelief. I couldn't even believe what I was reading.
Yeah, and if you think about, he hasn't officially been charged with anything, so we don't even want to speculate on what's true.
We're just kind of going off of what we know.
Yeah, so going off of what we know, I would say personally, on an objective level, my question to you, Nate, is does this set our basketball program back?
I think it hurts, but I don't think that this is a extreme setback to a basketball program that had been making progress over the last 3 years. So they just played their conference tournament game on last Saturday, which was an 85-79 loss to BYU. But and assistant head coach Sam Scholl was the head coach, and he's the acting head coach until the end of the season. I don't think that this incident and Coach Smith not being on the sidelines, I don't think that really had a huge effect on the outcome of the game. I think that, if they had to play maybe 1 or 2 days after this incident happened, it could have had an effect. But it had been almost a week, and I think that those guys were done answering questions about it. We're just excited to go out and play basketball. Mm-hmm. And I think that this certainly hurts, but it's not gonna. I don't think it's going to absolutely derail the program.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. I feel like I disagree with you though. Really, because although it was a good effort by our players to go out against BYU and put in a good performance given everything that's gone on, and I'm sure that all the players want to put this as far behind them. I know on a personal level that if I had to go out there and knowing that my coach, who I had trusted all season, did all this stuff, I would, right before the playoffs, I would be so shaken up, and it would, so I think that, on a player level, it had to play an effect. But Nate, let me ask you, but at least on a recruiting level, right? Because Lamont Smith dealt with a lot of the recruiting, or at least most of bringing players to USD. We had he did a great job in getting transfers, mm-hmm. Isaiah Pinheiro in, right? And he's in one of my classes, and came in after, and I saw him, and he looked kind of down in the dumps, man, felt bad for him. But on a recruiting level, do you think that Lamont not being there also sets us back? And then also USD potentially now has a bad reputation because of all this.
Yeah, I think that, Sam Scholl, he's been around this program for almost 10 years. He's been on Coach Smith's staff for, I think, 2 or 3 years now. So it's not like if he is promoted to being the head coach, which, again, we're just speculating here. I think that him being the head coach and being a familiar face around the program it's not going to be a complete derailment to our recruiting. But that's going to be my biggest question for whoever the new head coach is how good of a recruiter are you? Because Coach Smith was a very good recruiter, bringing in guys like Olin Carter, Tyler Williams, Juwan Gray, guys who have been absolute just extreme playmakers on this team. So that's going to be the biggest question is recruiting and how good of a recruiter is the new coach going to be if there is a new head coach. Yeah. But just given everything that's happened over the past week, I just want to give a shout out to the players who left everything out on the floor, gave everything that they had on Saturday afternoon in Las Vegas against BYU. They were down 17 points. They came back to tie the game and ended up losing. But all season, this team has shown heart. This team has shown fight. This team has shown tenacity, taking some really good teams down to the wire. And me as a member of the bullpen and as someone who went to every single game, after the games, they would come over, they would thank us, they would high five us, and they would do that even after games that they lost. Mm-hmm. And we in the bullpen were just so grateful for everything. everything that they accomplished this year. And so I just want to thank those guys for, the effort that they put in each and every week was just absolutely tremendous. And you know what? Given all this, they had a very good season. Yeah. They won 18 games. There's a chance that they could still go to a postseason tournament. So, you know, just focusing on basketball for a second, those guys had a tremendous season and, you know, deserve praise for their accomplishments this year.
Yeah, especially after recent events. This season is, I think, regardless, even if they had won 10 less games, still be equally as proud of these guys for, you know, kind of going through what they went through. And I think, like you said, in terms of recruiting, this next head coach is really, whoever it may be, is going to have to step up, because if I was a freshman and saw that USD was coming for me, I'll be like, wait, wasn't their last head coach arrested for domestic violence? Like, that would not want me to go to a school that we lost to Gonzaga by, 5?
Yeah, we lost to Gonzaga by 5, lost to St. Mary's by 3.
Yeah, and these are all ranked teams,
yeah.
And we were so close. So
we were up 8 on Gonzaga in the second half.
And so if you think that, and 2 years ago, how much were we losing to Gonzaga by?
Actually, last year we lost to Gonzaga by 58.
Exactly.
And we lost to St. Mary's by, I think, 45.
If the trajectory were to have continued under Lamont, there was maybe even speculation that next year we could have beaten some of those teams.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And been on a bubble for the big dance,
NCAA
like
the
NCAA tournament. But for me, this has to be a blow to that, and I think sets our program behind 2 or 3 years. That's me on a recruiting level. Just, it's going to be tough to get freshmen in after all this stuff going on, and it just makes it even that much worse knowing that we were just so close to beating these top teams and, you know, getting USD on the map, becoming a school like St. Mary's, which is a tiny school.
Yeah.
But they're able to compete with the big boys and be in the NCAA tournament, like, seemingly every year, and, you know, just put in work. So, you know, our hearts go out to the basketball players, and, you know, let's hope that they qualify for a postseason tournament, and that the basketball season, we haven't seen our last home game at USD yet.
I hope not.
Over this season, because
mostly because I want to wear the squirrel costume again.
Oh yeah, this guy runs out on, you know, he's a big guy in our student section, and he has a squirrel costume because one of our was he a freshman?
Yeah.
Basketball player.
Belarus.
Yeah, he's from Belarus, and his name is very hard to pronounce. So he was in talking to the media, he's like, oh, like, what name do you want to be, you know, referred to as? And he's just like, call me the squirrel. And then, so therefore, the squirrel jokes were born, and Nate has a squirrel costume. So,
which I just want to point out, I didn't buy it myself. Athletics bought it for me. Just
really?
Putting that out there. Yeah, I didn't buy that myself.
Wow. See,
yeah.
Athletics is
shout out to Robbie Hill and Athletics.
Yeah, shout out to NCAA funding for giving Nate a squirrel suit, but not paying our athletes. There we go. Okay. All right. On that beautiful note,
you said it, not me.
On that beautiful note, we will we'll be right back to discuss who is riding the bus this week.
Like what you're hearing? Well, I've got news for you. You no longer have to wait a whole week to hear from your favorite sports personalities. Hi, I'm Nate Wiggins, and Ben Friedel and I have got you covered. Give our show, The Unathletic, a sports podcast, a listen. We release new episodes every Monday and are committed to bringing you the best content. That's right, the very best content.